We're back. What can I say? Let's get after it. This is Iceman and Coach. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Iceman and Coach, the July version. This is the Iceman, Matt Freites. That is the Coach, Brad Powell. What's up, buddy? It's been a while.
Iceman, it has been a minute, but we are back, and we are on the eve of the Olympics opening ceremonies of the Summer Games, which is very, very exciting. And if we would have thought about it, and honestly, if we would have thought about it and had faith that we were going to actually follow through with doing a show tonight, because so many crazy things have occurred, we would have tried to set it up like the opening of the Olympics, and like you can come in like Bob Costas. Welcome to the 37th Olympiad on NBC or whatever it is. And
Are you ever or find yourself laughing when they say like the 37th Olympiad and you think that's such a low number? Like, we've had twice as many Super Bowls, but then you forget that it's every 4 years.
Well, is that, I don't even know what number it is. I just
remember.
pulled that one out of my rear end.
I figured you did that, but
I don't like most things that I say. It's just, that's where I acquired it.
Which is the charm of this show, is pulling stats and things out of our ass. So, I watched recently an interview with Bob Costas where he talked about how the opening ceremonies are like the worst thing that he does at the Olympics, because you have to say something about every country and every delegation that comes through, and there's just nothing that you can say sometimes. So he talked about how lately, or at the end of his Olympic run, he started pawning that off on other people, because he's like, you know what, I'm good, especially if it's not live. Like, he's totally good. So I'm not sure that would have been good content for anybody watching out here.
No, you got to believe that there's at least one athlete from every country that you could find something positive to say about, or there's at least some sort of a human interest story that you could dig up or whatever. And then the fun ones for me are when there's like one, especially you see it more maybe in the winter games, where there's like a country that's like a warm weather country, kind of like, the Jamaica, where like there's one athlete that made it in some like crazy obscure winter sport. It's like the first time their country's ever had an Olympian in a winter sport or something like that. I think it's fun when you see things like that happen. Well,
and there are less countries, I think, involved in the Winter Olympics, so you're likely to have a story like that. But in the Summer Olympics, you get, like, remember the guy from Tonga, I think it was, who came out with just ripped with the oil and everything, carrying the flag, like 3 Olympics in a row. Unless we can do that, there's no way that we're going to put on a show that looks like or sounds like an opening ceremony and have it actually be good, because nobody needs to see us oiled up in any sort of fashion, I would say.
No, we'd get shut down, I'm sure, as we should in that case.
Well, I mean, we might get shut down for being fake news or less factual or whatever you want to call it. But I think this is a good time. So before we get into the meat of the show here, anybody who's been watching, listening, or whatever for any semblance of time probably noticed that we have been less active this summer, when last summer we were pretty active. And this was an unintentional break that we ended up taking. I don't want to call it a break, but sort of a forced rest for us. And we decided that this is going to become permanent, because we're not as good talking about other sports that happen in the non-football time frame, or actually in the non-college basketball time frame. And so we kind of decided that maybe this is the best version of us, is to come back around this time, have a little bit of a summertime off, so to speak, do an episode once a month, just so you remember that we exist. But I think that's a good idea. Hopefully people will ride with us doing that. And I'm looking forward to it, because, look, we got this episode. Next week, I'm going on one more vacation, and then it is football season, and we are back. We are ready to go. College basketball is right around the corner. Braves Talk, Bradley Nation is going to be all over it, and it's going to be a busy time, basically starting in August all the way until April. And so we need some rest.
Yeah, it has been needed, and you've done a lot of traveling this summer. You were wrapped up in T-ball. We had softball going on, just regular everyday life. has happened. So just a lot going on this summer, and I do think, yeah, it's nice to get a little bit of a break. And and really, we attempted, we scheduled time to do a show many times, and it's just like, I don't know, fate wouldn't let it happen. So maybe we'll just quit fighting it, and we'll take the break and look forward to football season.
By the way, I noticed you have a Cedar Point shirt on, and I think I've told you on this pod that I'm a stakeholder in Cedar Point, or was, because they just got bought out by Six Flags, which made my
Well,
stock portfolio
merger,
go up.
merger.
Whatever. Either way, my stock portfolio went like this, and I was very, very happy as a stakeholder who has never been to Cedar Point before. However, that pandemic crash really helped me out big time. So I invested in Cedar Point, and I am invested until the end.
It's a nice place. It's a neat place to go because it is basically, it's on a little peninsula in Lake Erie, and so surrounded on three sides by water. Very small piece of land, but the theme park is huge. I mean, it encompasses nearly the entire thing, and there's an old hotel that's out right between the park and Lake Erie called Hotel Breakers. That's really cool. It's got a beach behind it, and it's just a cool experience. They do a good job there. It's a nice, clean theme park. A lot of the Cedar Fair parks are well taken care of, it seems like. So we had fun. We went there a couple years ago, and it was a good time. And I hope we get back sometime soon.
Yeah, maybe that's something that we can do with the family. My wife is not a roller coaster person. I'm not sure if I am anymore. It's been so long since I've been on a major one that maybe in my 40s I won't be. But speaking of nice places, let's go into the Olympics because the Olympics happen every 4 years. This time it's every three. The pandemic put a lot of things in a different place. The last time we had these games was 2021. And full disclosure, I am somebody who's obsessed with the Olympics. The 2 weeks or whatever it is that it's on is just appointment television for me. I can't get enough of it. And I think it's because it is so unique. And this time around, it's in Paris, one of the most, if not the most famous city in the entire world. So lots of things are going into these Olympics. But we've talked about this somewhat briefly offline. But how do you feel about the Olympics?
I love the Olympics. I think the fact that it is once every 4 years, but it encompasses so many different events. So you could easily find something that suits your taste. And also it's a great opportunity to expose yourself to maybe different or more unique sports. And I think it's super interesting some of the things that have become Olympic events over the years. And so I always find it interesting when they add events, remove events, and stuff like that to try to keep things, I guess, fresh and relevant to some degree. And although, except for about 8 years ago, they tried to they threatened to remove wrestling, which luckily the wrestling community got behind it, and that did not happen. But it's like, how can you remove, like, other than running, like wrestling's like the original Olympic sport. Like, how could you get rid of wrestling? So, no, I look forward to the Summer Olympics, all the Olympics, but Summer Olympics, I feel like, um, or there's more events that are kind of hotly contested that the Americans, have sort of a rival of sorts in a lot of different events, which I think brings a little bit more interest.
So I heard this take and I want to know how you feel about it. But somebody said that the Olympics are sports for people who don't like sports.
I could see that maybe, because it's really, yeah, you have basketball, you have baseball, um, but a lot of the other sports are more kind of niche sports. And the Olympics, I feel like more so than about the sport, it's the sports themselves are a lot of human interest stories. And so, you're going to see celebrities born. Stars will be born over the next 2 weeks during the Olympics, because of, different things that happen and take place. And I think that, Americans, especially, we love a good human interest story. We love an underdog story. And we will get that by the truckload, I'm sure, over the next couple weeks.
Yes, but the Olympics are, to me, unique in the fact that they are so different from professional sports because, for the most part, they are mostly amateur sports. And if you think about the people who participate in these events, many of them are young, right? If you think about the most hotly contested ones, swimming, track, you don't see 38, 39-year-old guys in there. Now, when you go to like archery or things like that, you might see canoeing, some of those like water sports you may see older guys or older women do that kind of stuff. But for the most part, it's younger people in their prime. And it's a different factor because you're competing for your country. And one of the things I think that has been appealing for the most part, now, of course, there have been events over the course of the Olympics that have bled into the political, but for the most part, everything kind of stops for the Olympics when you go there. And it's just about the friendly rivalry that exists between these countries in the sports format, which is how it came about in the first place. And there is something nice to, I guess, behold there, where you think in today's tumultuous world all over the place, for these 2 weeks, these men and women are going to go there, compete in their sport that they've been training for 4 years for, and that's all that's going to be. I think that's the best part. And especially when you think about competing for your own country, having your own colors on, there has to be no better feeling in the world.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so, man. It's got to be really special, and the fact to be crowned the best in the world at what you do is got to be an incredible feeling, and to do it for your country, and to know, just to have even sort of an inkling of the amount of time that these people put into this, the amount of time they invest in training and practice, and really, I mean, probably honestly their entire lives up to this point. And what is so, and you kind of alluded to it, it's like once it's over, it's just over. There's no, there's no professional outlet for a lot of these things. So it's like, what now? And unless you do happen to be kind of one of those media darlings that gets some endorsement deals or something, you're kind of going to get chewed up and spit out into the real world. And I think I saw a clip off of a podcast where Shawn Johnson, the women's gymnastics Olympian, gold medalist, she was talking about how like crazy it was when she quit competing, like to like assimilate back to like normal life, like even things as simple as like eating in her diet, because she ate such a strict diet. She's like, wait, like I can eat like anything? Like, I mean, it was almost overwhelming to her that she didn't have this regimented lifestyle and had the freedom to kind of do whatever she wanted.
There are the sports in the Olympics that the degree of difficulty is so high and the margin for error is so small. Gymnastics, I think, is probably in the pantheon of sports that meets that criteria, because you think about, excuse me, how perfect that they have to be when they do this. And you're talking about, again, 4 years in a microsecond where it could all crash down. Now, running and swimming, I mean, there's a lot of events that take place over the course of time, but you can have a bad race and still be one of the best in the world, right? You don't have to be at your A plus game every single time you get in the pool. But when you're a gymnastics or you're a gymnast, you have to be. And we saw that 3 years ago with Simone Biles, where when you're not right, it's dangerous. Like it can't, even for the best person to ever do it. And so the time that people put into this, and the other thing I think that is not taken into account, and we've talked about this in a negative way, where parents who like to live vicariously through their children, I would assume that there's a combination of parents who do that, but also there's a combination of parents who see that their child has an affinity for this sport, right? Because think about with our kids, we try to stick them in some kind of sport, figure out what they like and don't like. And gymnastics at like the newborn age almost is like pretty common, where they learn how to fall, they learn how to use their bodies. And that's where it happens, right? The spark for these little things. You send them off to swim lessons. You know, Riley right now is in softball. We don't know. And it's funny how those things percolate and happen. And I love the interest pieces for the parents because it's a sacrifice for them too, right? Because they're the ones that got to take them to all the practices and pay all the money to send them to all these places. This is not cheap. It's not cheap to train for the Olympics whatsoever.
No, not at all. And that's why it's very commendable, because likely this has cost you and your family thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime, and all for, I don't want to say just a gold medal or just an opportunity to compete for a gold medal or just an opportunity to compete for your country, but and because those things are very meaningful. But I mean, as far as like a tangible benefit at the end, there isn't one, right? And so it does come down to like, what does it mean to you personally? And I'm happy, I'm glad, I'm very proud that there are people out there who this means something to be able to compete for the United States. That's awesome, man, and I'm really excited about it.
Do you ever
Can't you
put
tell by the
yourself?
tone of my voice? I'm really
Well, yes.
excited about it.
But do you ever put yourself in the position like when I watch the Olympics now, the last time the Olympics were on, I had a child. The time before that, I did not. But the last time, whenever they show the parents, I put myself in that position and think, what would I do? Like, what would it feel like to have my child make the Olympics? Doesn't matter if they win or not. Just to make an Olympic team, to be in that moment one of the best in the world to do what it is that they do. And I just think about what that must feel like because as parents, there's a lot of frustrating moments and we get caught up in the minutia of taking care of our kids, but in the end, their successes give us joy and satisfaction, or at least that's how it should work, right? And so I don't know. This time around, I'll probably think about it more because our kids are getting older. Every time this happens, 4 years goes by. And it's hard not to think about it. It's hard not to put yourself in a position of, man, how would that feel besides nerve wracking?
Oh, I'd be a wreck, man. Like, I know how I felt during this softball season because, Riley played coach pitch, and I pitched probably 75% of the season. The last 3 quarters of the season, I pitched. And, I know how it felt when, like, she was up and maybe there's, like, a runner on third, and it was, like, sort of a critical moment in the game, and I'm like, 1, the pressure's on me to throw her a hittable pitch, but 2, like, for her to, hoping that she has success and gets a hit or whatever else, like, just that anxiety and those nerves for an 8U coach pitch softball game, like, I would be outside of my mind if she was competing in the Olympics. It would be I honestly thinking about it, like, it sounds miserable, because I know how I would feel. I would be just I'd be a mess.
So what I'm hearing is that she should not have you throw pitches for the home run derby.
No, that probably wouldn't go well, no.
She'd be like, "Come on, can we get somebody else in here?"
There was a game, when we had our little town ball tournament. I don't know if I told you about this. So we played 3 games in one day. I pitched all 3 games. So like 15 innings of pitching.
Man, your arm
And
must have been
the
done.
so in game 2, I like in the middle of game 2, like I start struggling, man. It was almost like I thought I was like getting the yips. Like I was like nearly rolling the ball in at times, like airmailing it to the back. I'm like, I cannot throw the ball down the middle. Like, I mean, I hit a rough patch, and which is a terrible feeling because the poor girls that are at the plate, like, they're helpless. And I worked through it, okay? I battled through it, and I overcame adversity, and I went on to be fine, but the guy that I coached with, he was coaching first base, and this game, first base happened to be by the other team's dugout, and one of the coaches for the other team, I guess, was like, "Hey, do you have another pitcher?" He's like, "Do you have a backup?" Okay, he's like, "Well, yeah, it's me." He's like, "But he'll be alright." Like, but, yeah, he was
Oh,
the other team's coach was even worried about me, I guess, but
that'd be awesome
like I
if they
said,
were like bringing the righty, they're
yeah,
doing the
they come
arm
out
thing. They're
there.
just like, yeah, just kind of, we need to. I don't know what I would do. That would
I I wanted to yank myself, man, like, um,
keep it clean,
but
man.
yeah,
Come
I
on, come
did not
on.
mean that.
Yeah,
I
because
wanted to
our
remove myself from the responsibility of pitching.
much better. So we talked about how there's so many different sports. What are some of your favorite sports to watch?
Well, of course, wrestling, right? I follow wrestling. This is the pinnacle of wrestling. Being an Iowa fan, I always had a lot of Olympic medalists. And this year, then I've talked on this show about Spencer Lee before. He's a 3-time national champion at Iowa, and he is the United States representative at 57 kilograms. And so, really excited. I mean, he's going to have a shot at medaling or potentially winning a gold medal, which will be tons of fun. The U.S. in wrestling is pretty solid. It doesn't sound like the Russians will be competing, which is, I mean, it's unfortunate because it's one of those things where like Russia is probably historically traditionally known as the power in wrestling. But the U.S. has been right there with them here over the last decade or so. So it's unfortunate that they won't be there because it's one of those deals where there will always be like, unfortunately, some sort of an asterisk next to it if like somebody does win. And there shouldn't be because you know what? At the end of the day, like 20 years from now, no one's gonna be like, well, so and so gold medalist, but Russia wasn't there. I mean, and so I don't think history will reflect back on it just fine. But in the moment, I think there might be some people that want to maybe make less of it because of the Russians not being there. But other than that, I really enjoy. I like swimming. Um, and I think it's because one, it's very easy to understand, right? It's very easy to tell who wins and loses. You don't have to like understand any special rules. It's quick. It's like fast paced action, which is good. And the US is good at it. And so, you kind of get to see some like American dominance, which is fun to see. And then diving is pretty crazy to me too. I think that's really interesting because it's like terrifying to me. And the fact, I mean, like, sure, anybody can fall from 30 feet in the air, but to like do it as gracefully and as athletically as they do is incredibly impressive.
What about
There are a couple
synchronized diving? Synchronized
that's
diving is
that's got to
nuts.
be tough, man. Yeah. Because you're talking about, I mean, no two human beings are the same. You know what I mean?
No,
And like, it's like I may be able to do this very easily, and we have to do this as part of our because I'm sure there are certain criteria that need to be met. It's like I can do this very easily, but maybe you can't. And so this is a real challenge for you to do this specific part of this dive or whatever, and like to have to be relying on another person. And I imagine you spend a lot of time with that person. But it is very impressive. That and oh, there's a couple others I have. Sand volleyball is kind of fun to watch. Um, Men's and women's. I'm not here being like, oh, just like watching the chicks in the bikinis playing volleyball. I'm not saying that. Doesn't hurt, but the water polo is always kind of
that's
I love
hard.
water polo. Yeah, that's why I'm like that's got to be difficult. You're just swimming nonstop, and like it'd be
Treading
like
water.
yeah, treading water, and you're being physical. There's OG. I just saw he just popped this comment there. Water polo, yeah, and you're sitting there it's kind of physical, for being in the water.
I mean,
So
kinda. It is physical.
yeah,
Like they're grabbing you, and like that's the thing. One of the sports that nobody takes seriously, but is ridiculously hard, is synchronized swimming. It's the
yeah,
same kind of thing, and it's actually my sister in law was talking about it. She was a former gymnast, and she hates how dolled up they get and how ridiculous they are, the way they have to walk, the way they have to look, because what they're doing is so difficult. Doing anything in the water that's already hard to do on land is, in my mind, like it, but it's just so hard to take it seriously because of how it looks and how it's
sure,
presented, right? But the water polo thing always gets me. First of all those guys are super ripped, right? Like super ripped.
yeah,
And it's just like 2% body fat. And it's like if you took rugby and put it in a pool, basically, just without
yeah.
like the tackling. But it's not, I mean, it's a very, and I think the pool is like 13 feet deep. So they're in like the dive pool. There is no way they're touching, they're treading water, they're moving back and forth. And they score what, like 12 goals a game or something? Like it's crazy.
It is crazy, man. It's really intense and fun to watch. I mentioned sand volleyball. I don't really care to watch most the like the basketball, baseball. Baseball still in it.
I don't think
Um,
baseball is anymore, but
might
those
have
are the
removed it.
sports we can watch all the time. So like it's
Right.
not as fun. No, gold medal game, sure, might watch that,
Like I don't
but
get into like archery. That doesn't like
that's tough to
intrigue
get
me.
into. That's
Yeah.
really tough to get into. Now, I think the last cycle they added karate and sparring. That was interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because they also had the artistic part of it too. There's like a, but yeah, I think, are they doing, is it rodeo?
Fencing.
Fence.
Fencing.
Oh, fencing is
Love
so hard.
fencing.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, it popped into my head. Notre Dame. Notre Dame is known for producing Olympic fencers. I think one of the women who won a gold medal last go around was a recent graduate of Notre Dame. But um, the there's one more thing. The track,
Of
the
course.
short events though. I don't want to. I'm not too
Ah,
interested in watching the 6,400 meter or whatever. I want to see like the 100 meters, the 100-meter hurdles, the 4x4, the 4x1, the 4x2. Like I want to see that stuff that's fast and explosive. Um, and the other ones can be fun to watch, but they're not as I don't know. They just don't intrigue me as much as the fast ones,
for me, the
short ones.
Olympics have changed a little bit. But if there's a sport that is ridiculous to watch, badminton is insane. Like and
Oh yeah,
also
and how
table
like
tennis.
hardcore.
Table
Like the
tennis.
Asian countries are so
Oh
good at
God.
badminton, man. They're ridiculous. And like if you've ever gone to a gym, and I'm not stereotyping, but like you ever go to a gym where like they have badminton nets, like you could go to a gym anywhere in the country, and there will be people that are their nationality is Asian. Okay, that are playing badminton in any gym across America. And they're ridiculous at it.
Well, when we play it, right? I'm sure you played it as a kid. You have the net out in the
Yeah.
yard, and it's like you can get 3 volleys maybe, and they are just back and forth, back and forth. But the table tennis always gets me because they start out this, and then when you get those long volleys where they're like 10, they're so far away from each other, and the coordination that it takes to do that. And the Americans generally aren't super, super good at those types of sports just for some reason. But they're fascinating to watch because they're leisure sports. There's something that you would see at like a bar, or like if you think about it, and it's
Right.
like these people are doing it at such a high level. It's not even at ringer status anymore. It's just insanity.
It is. It's incredible. And the bicycle racing, like the on the track, with it's like the wooden track that's like banked
The
or
velodrome or
whatever.
whatever it's called.
Like that's super fascinating to me because I'm like, I would there's no, I mean, it's one of those things as a kid, you're like, that looks so fun, but like I wouldn't be able to pedal hard enough
It's like
to
speed
not fall on
skating.
my face. Speed skating, yeah, that's winter, but that's a fun one to watch too.
So you talked about track and field. I mean, track and field swimming probably get the most casual viewers because, as you said, it's obvious, right? It's obvious who wins, who loses. It's something that everybody can do, I think. And I don't mean at that level, but like in some form or fashion, we've all ran. In some form or fashion, most of us have swam. So we can understand how to do that. But it's all about the level at which that they do it. And I understand what you're talking about with the shorter ones, right? That they are more appealing because it's like it's, I don't know, instant gratification, so to speak, where
Yes.
and the burst speed that it takes to run the 100 meters and to be as fast as Usain Bolt was, as consistently as he was, we can respect what it takes to do that. Now, a good portion of that is genetics, and you and I were not built with those genetics.
Well, and to see someone that's that much faster than the fastest people in the world, like it's just like nuts. And I think it was I feel like it was Robin Williams. It was either Robin Williams or Bill Murray. I don't know why those two are popping in my head. That had a bit one time where they said that that they should put an average ordinary person in every Olympic event just for reference for how good. So like you should be you should be swimming in the
Oh,
Olympics just so we can see how impressive um the Olympians are. Because when you
what?
do see the best against the best, it doesn't necessarily, in some sports, it doesn't necessarily look that impressive.
Well, you
Because
know
you're
what's
like, hell, they're
funny?
just swimming.
I was talking with my wife about that because when we were, she had to take James to another pool because they were cleaning the one that he normally goes to. And there was this old woman in there, like she's probably in her 70s. And Chrissy said she's watching her and she's like, she's going really slow. She looks really awkward. She gets out, she's like totally ripped, right? Like totally, totally ripped. And when I watch people at the pool now, I can't tell how fast that they're going until I'm in the water and I start. So sometimes if I start a length at the same time that they do, I'll get an idea about how fast that they are. Most of them are faster than I am. And then it's like, you can't tell, right? Like even when you're watching on TV, like you know objectively that 17 seconds is fast or winning by point 0.1 of a second is ridiculous. But when you watch it, like if we were there, I'm not sure how exciting it would be because I don't know how fast that they would look like they're going, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's something, I mean, I think it's true in all sports, even uh football, basketball, because like you see him out there and you're like you see a guy in the NFL miss a block and you're like, oh, that guy's a bum, whatever. Well, he's also trying to block one of the, a premier athlete, you know what I mean? That's like trained his whole life to do this. So it's not like you got by the guy. Um, so yeah, it's sometimes hard to keep it in perspective how impressive these folks really are.
So this comment here talking about distance running being a different animal that actually is perfect to what I wanted to say earlier when you talked about the short sports. And I love the distance stuff. Now I have a different perspective because I did distance running for years. And so watching the marathon for me is fascinating because while it takes a long time, the world record is like 2 hours. That's objectively a long time to watch something. There are so many things that happen that I can recognize within the race itself and know this is going to come back at the end or something like that. It's not just about who kicks at the end and gets there. There's so many things that happen. And It's exactly right. Distance running is so different. It's a mental game, right? Like our body can do they can do things in short bursts and go fast, right? But if you asked Usain Bolt to run a marathon, I mean, he probably does distance running because believe it or not, you have to run longer distances to train for the 100, right? Because there's so many different muscles involved, but it's not easy. And it's not easy at that pace. And like even the long distance swimming is ridiculous. And I'll have a stat of the week about that later on. But think about 1,500 meters, for instance. That's almost a mile. So you're swimming a mile in the world record's like 15 minutes, which for perspective, I did that in like 45 minutes. That was my best time. So the world record holder could break the world record twice, shower, and still be out by the time I finished.
And that's exactly what we're talking about, though. How good these people are, and I think you made a good point about how the mental side of these distance sports, whether it's swimming, running, I'm sure even the distance cycling, these events that take place over an extended period of time, because like yes, like you have to have some mental toughness to go through the training, the prolonged training for any event. But as far as like the mental toughness to get through the event itself, like any like what like the 100 meter, what Usain Bolt run the 100 meter in?
That was
Was
like
it 9
9.7 or
seconds or
something
something?
like
Like
that. Yeah.
anybody could do almost anything for 9 seconds, right? Like there's not like a mental block you have to overcome to run as fast as you can for 9 seconds. Now to train to run to do the training necessary to be able to run 100 meters in 9 seconds, different story. Like it takes a lot of mental toughness to do that. But as far as like performing in the moment, you're not having that mental battle that takes place over the course of 26.2 miles, right? And so that's a great point, and that's something that and again, like you're going through all that stuff in training, but then of course you're going to endure that on the day of the event as well.
And for me, it brings up memories because I did 7 marathons total, which is kind of crazy if you
That
think
is
about it.
crazy.
It's a lot. I did a lot of running in my peak days when I was in my late 20s and all the way through about my early 30s. It was like a 5-year period. And I can tell you stories about the first one where my body gave out halfway through and you got halfway to go. Like you're not going to give up. Or ones where it's like 20 miles in, you feel great and everything shuts down and you do what you've got to do to survive. And that's not even at an elite level. That's at the Joe Schmo level where you're just trying to get through, make this accomplishment happen. But you talked about the training. I mean, I would start training for a marathon 3 months out. It would be that long. And we're talking, I was running, gosh, like 70 to 100 miles a week just to be fast, right? To be fast for 26 miles. And I can recognize what it takes. And having not done it at that level, I can only imagine what it takes to do it at that level. So I like those sports because of I have a personal connection to them. And maybe now you will have a person like I'm going to watch wrestling now.
Yeah, no, and it'll be fun too. No, I'm looking forward to wrestling, and no, you're right. I mean, the training and stuff is incredible, and Dad highlighted a few events here that are also really interesting, like triple jump, pole vault, high jump. Totally agree. I mean, those folks are like you want to see like some freak athletes.
Oh, yeah.
Um, those are some events you want to watch, and you see like such unique like the steeplechase and crap like that. You know what I mean? It's that that you would never see anywhere else,
No,
which
but
is
if you want my official opinion, I think the most impressive thing is the hurdles, like especially the 100-meter hurdles, because those things are tall. They're like more than half of my height. And to run that fast and jump over them and never hit them is friggin' impressive.
it is. It's really, really impressive. And then what like the decathlon, 10 events in one and all that stuff, and like the
There's so
triathlon is a
many.
part of there's so many different
There
athlons, I think, that are a part of the Olympics. And it's just funny how like somewhere someone decided we're gonna take these 10 things and put them all together for one event.
and make some poor schmuck have to do them and do them at an elite level. But the games start tomorrow, so the opening ceremonies are tomorrow, and I'm going to watch them. I'm sure you're going to watch them. But before we move on from the Olympics, there are two, I don't want to say controversies, but two interesting things to talk about. So 3 years ago, I think surfing was a new event, and that's pretty cool. My brother-in-law Mike loves to surf, so he liked to watch it. But this time, it's in Tahiti, which I believe is like 10,000 miles from Paris, and I believe it's a French colony. So I think there is some sort of a
Yeah.
French connection there. Now they gave us some BS thing about, oh, we want to, extend the Olympics, blah 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 blah. Basically, they don't have waves in Paris, so they needed to put the surfers somewhere so they could catch a damn wave. But I don't know. I guess it feels weird, but at the same time, like that you could do what you got to do.
Yeah, I think that I see both sides. Like on one hand, I think as if you were going to the Olympics, you'd be like, man, I don't get to be around like everybody else in the Olympic Village and just all the excitement or to go watch other events after yours is over and stuff. You miss out on all of that. But on the other hand, you get to spend, a couple weeks in Tahiti. I mean, so that's probably not too bad.
Yes, and you talked about the Olympic Village. I think if you're going to be anywhere, that Tahiti's probably better because you don't have cardboard anti-sex beds.
Right? And I've seen some of these athletes like making videos about like the mattresses and like how like they're supposed to be like soft. There's like soft sections and hard sec, and they're like the soft is not soft at all. It's just crazy to me that they can't get these people better like accommodations at the Olympics.
Well, I guess from my perspective, why do they care if they have sex with each other? Like these are the top athletes in the world. They know, excuse me, they know what these things do to them. Like having sex before an event may drain them the next day. So they're all smart enough to know. And also, if they want to, who cares? Like I just don't understand. Like they've sort of backtracked and said that's not what it is. It's just we're using reusable materials and blah blah blah. But for years they've been talking about this, and I think even the last Olympics it was the same thing. Why does it matter? Like I don't understand the obsession with these people fraternizing with each other. It's the
No, I
Olympics,
mean,
the
let's come
Olympic
on.
Village.
Let's be honest. For the sake of our species, like these are the people we want procreating with
I
each other.
mean, from an
I mean,
athletic perspective,
right?
yes. Well, actually, and like if you think about like the swimmers, a lot of them are going to like Stanford. So they're not
Right.
unintelligent people.
Yeah, I mean, you're just gonna make more highly successful athletes, and it's gonna sustain a healthier species, man. In the long run, go for it. I'd encourage it.
It just doesn't, I mean, if you're thinking about the Olympics, it's once every 3 years. This is your moment to shine. But let's say that your event is at the beginning and you're done and you won a gold medal. Go out and celebrate with some hot person that you find attractive who maybe also is done. Like it's the only time in your life you're gonna have an experience like this. And I agree with you though. It's like, well, this is also a discussion about what happens with an Olympics. Like so many cities get stuck with all this stuff. And then I mean, I'm sure you've seen pictures, articles. Like, I mean,
Like
Athens
the
was
ruins.
20
Yeah.
years ago and it's like a shell of itself. It never got used again. And in some countries, in some cities, they can actually repurpose things. Like France probably already had some of this stuff. They'll probably repurpose it. I mean, especially if you think about the Olympic Stadium, PSG, right? There's so many football teams that go through there. So, like, it'll get used, but not in every country. And it's fascinating how these things happen. But it's like the accommodations are always bad for the Olympians. Folks, the reason that the Olympics are there is the Olympians. So, maybe give them a nice mattress to sleep on. Just a thought.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. I completely agree.
And that actually is a good segue away from the Olympics, but kind of not. So ESPN did something recently. I mean, we're coming up on 25 years into this century now, and they love to make lists. You and I like to make fun of lists around here because we don't find any of this like list making to be very fun outside of, faux controversy. But they put out what they called, I believe it was the top 100 athletes since the year 2000. And I've heard some interesting opinions on this, but number one is Michael Phelps. And many people have said, how could somebody who only competes every 4 years be number one? And I immediately think those people don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, come on. I mean, the guy is like the most successful Olympian of all time. We just talked about, how special it is to be the best in the world at something and to be as dominant as he was. I don't have a problem with that. Um, I think that for me, for my taste, way too many tennis players
A
ranked
lot of
high on
tennis
this list,
players.
which I found interesting. I think that it's so subjective because everybody's going to have a different answer for a lot of these. It's like the whole who's better, Michael or LeBron or Kobe. It's so subjective, and um, it's and also to not surprisingly, I think that you know ESPN made a strong effort to be as equal as possible throughout this list in multiple ways, which is fine. But I don't. To me, like as I read through it, I'm like, okay, that person's a great athlete. Like every single one, I'm like, that person's a great athlete. That person's a great athlete. But as far as like, you could have like put those 100 names in a hat, and with a few exceptions, you could have just drawn them out of a hat and put them in order, and gotten the same result essentially. I just felt like it was just a list of great athletes as opposed to like a ranking. I had a hard time like viewing it as a ranking.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Is it's all subjective. But so just for transparency, Michael Phelps was number one, Serena Williams was number two, number three was Messi, of course, your boy. Number four was LeBron. Number five was Tom Brady. Number six was Roger Federer. Seven, Simone Biles. Eight, Tiger Woods. Nine, Usain Bolt. And 10, Kobe Bryant. We're not going to go over all 100, but I will say this about something like this. If you're trying to rank in any way, individual sports and dominating in an individual sport is much easier to get the championship accolades that go with domination, right? So, like Michael Phelps being in a sport that only he has to compete with him, like he's not in a team. He doesn't have to rely on a bunch of people. Now, of course, there are relays and certain things like that he did famously in 2008, one of the most exciting swimming races I've ever seen. But for the most part, it's him competing against the other people and the other competition. And same thing with like tennis. Serena Williams, she's facing one person every single time. She doesn't have to worry about some other teammate who dropped the ball or something like that. And so I agree with you that when you put these individual sports people on there, that it does make it a little harder to discern. Now, let's take Tiger Woods, for example. Now, Tiger Woods had a moment in time or a time period where you tuned in to watch him. And to me, that's the kind of intangible thing that I think goes into what considers people great. I took umbrage with LeBron over Brady because I'm like, okay, LeBron has longevity and things like that, but like winning in football is really, really hard to do. And it's also the ultimate team sport because you have so many other people to rely on. Tom Brady is not out on the field at all times. And so for him to do what he did and win as much as he did, knowing all the factors that go into it, to me, that's more impressive than LeBron being under 500 in the finals. You know what I mean?
I agree with that. I think that, and I mean, and Tom Brady's, you talk about longevity. I mean, that guy played until he was 40, right? So,
45.
I mean, he had plenty of longevity, and to do what he did, we haven't seen anything like it, and he did it with two different teams, two different franchises, and you could really make an argument that a lot of the times he did it, like if you read through a lot of those rosters, now obviously there was great teams, but those are not star-studded rosters where you're going to read through and be like, I mean, the best team he ever had as far as like quality of the roster from a just on paper didn't win the Super Bowl, and that was the team with Randy Moss, the loss to the Giants or whatever. I mean, the 16-0 and everything else. Now, granted, I mean that team was the best team in the league by far, hands down. It's just the Giants made one more play that night, but it's he's shaking your head over there. That's probably a painful memory.
So just to, since you asked, it's the only game I've never gotten over. Like for the most part, everything else is just like whatever, it's sports. But that one really, really hurt for many reasons because of all the things that happened, who they lost to, how the game went. Like just there were so many factors that just the losing a Super Bowl is one thing, but losing immortality, that hurts on a different level. And it's the only game that I still, because you had that stupid helmet catch by a guy who never made a catch in the NFL again after that, but is in the front office for the Giants, or at least he was last I checked. So like
David Tyree, is that?
Yes, David Tyree.
Say his name. Say his name.
Covered by Rodney Harrison, right? I mean, that whole play where, gosh, I mean, the play lasted so long. There had to have been a holding call somewhere. Like there's so many things about that play that are so ridiculous. And good for them. They won. That's the only one that hurts. That's all I'll say about that.
No, and that's fair, man. As sports fans, we've all been a part of losses like that are just tough to take, and they sit with you for a long time. That's the beauty of sports. And but yeah, that list is interesting. And I do think the individual aspect versus team sports makes it tough. And the point you made about Tiger Woods being like appointment viewing, and I feel like Michael Phelps is that way,
Oh,
too.
100%.
And I think if you look through that and said, if I knew this person was competing, would I stop what I was doing to turn on the TV? Uh, that's like a good indicator of probably where they should, if they should be on this list or where they should be on this list. And to be honest with you, through those top 10 to 15 on the list, there's not a lot of them that I would be like, yep, yep, yep. Probably a handful. And
Well,
now
and
that's
that,
just personal preference too, as
yes.
far as sports that I'm into and things like that. I have nothing against. I coach tennis, played tennis. I have nothing against the sport of tennis. I'm just not really interested in watching it.
Sure. But like, let's take Simone Biles, for instance, right? We talk about gymnastics,
Uh,
and
Appointment
she,
viewing.
well, she is doing things that nobody has ever done to the point where they're naming moves after her. So, in that regard, I think she has earned this status. I mean, clearly she comes with the accolade, she comes with the talent, and nobody has really ever come close. And that's why I say Tiger. Like, Tiger in that 99 through 2002 period was just insane to the point that taking Tiger over the field wasn't that crazy at the time. Like he was that good and that dominant, and people tuned in to watch him. But the one, and Usain Bolt, right? The fastest man in the world. I mean, he was so good in something that has such a high bar, and to be as consistent and win as often as he did in what a lot of people consider the most exciting sports event ever, right? And of all time. I like stuff like that. But the one that got me when I scrolled through like the top 20 is Tim Duncan ranked over Shaquille O'Neal. Shaq has to hate that.
Yeah. I'm sure he does. And that's why I said it's so subjective, and you're looking through this, and it's like you could throw these people in about any order that you wanted to. And yeah, I'm certain that Shaq takes exception.
Yeah, I'm like Sidney Crosby at 22. Like, I
Yeah, a lot of these
mean,
they just feel weird.
huh? Yeah, I mean, yeah. So like you scroll through, I mean, they had Lewis Hamilton, and I'm like, F1 just had a minute like 5 minutes ago. Like, is it really one of the, I don't know. So like there's a lot of things where if I don't know anything about the sport, it's hard for me to say it, but it's all subjective. But I really wanted to use it to say like anybody who says that Michael Phelps isn't worthy of that honor because he only or you only give a crap about him every 4 years, the dominance was there, and it's one thing to be good at what you do. It's another thing to be dominant. And so I think that that's fair, but if you want to go look at the whole list, go to ESPN, you can get angry, get upset, and if you want to give us your take, you can always call us 703-718-6314 is the number to give us that opinion or whatever it is that you want to do. Just get angry, right? Cuz lists exist to get angry. And buddy, football is right around the corner, and that is the season of list making. And let's talk about college for a sec. So, well, actually, let's talk about both. Both camps are kind of opening right now. And yet, I'm sure you would agree with me that there's a different feeling entirely if you're a pro fan versus a college fan. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so because I feel like on the pro level, there's the preseason and all these training camp. It just seems so anymore because you have holdouts and contract situations, and a lot of times if your team's just gonna stink. There's just I mean it's just and I mean don't get me wrong, like we've been you always have the surprises, which I'm sure we'll talk plenty about when we get closer to the season, but for me, like there's more optimism on the college side of things a little bit. And I think that's just because there are more unknowns too with the transfer portal, and some of these rosters are getting completely turned over, nearly completely turned over. And so you're just looking at it on paper, and in some cases you can only imagine what the team's going to look like with the new pieces, to where there's a lot, the pieces in the NFL for the most part. I mean, these guys don't move around as much. They stay longer. There are more known factors in the NFL, and so I think that leaves more room for optimism and hope in college football. And you have, this year's, we have the new revamped, gigantic Big Ten conference, the new look Big 12, and so I mean, narrowing down here into the super conferences, like we're well on our way,
By the way,
but
I saw the Oregon Duck traveling through Indianapolis.
yeah, I mean, and it's just bizarre, but I love it. I think the Big Ten is going to be fun to watch. And so I think there's excitement about that. There's excitement about the opportunity for new rivalries. You had College Football 25 that just came out, and I think just people are pumped about I am excited about college football, and I'm looking forward to the NFL too. Probably more than I have. I don't know why. I think I'm just more tuned into it a little bit this year. Um, and I think this show is kind of obviously forces me to pay a little bit more attention. But overall, man, it's exciting stuff.
I think college, so as I've gotten older, I've appreciated and loved college football more. It's not that I don't like watching the NFL, it's just the NFL after a while misses something for me, or it's missing something for me. And I think the difference is you talk about opening camps and you look at these schools, and if you're at a Colorado or if you're at any or Virginia Tech even, right? It's all about hope right now. You're trying to build on what you did before, the hype of what you could possibly accomplish. And there isn't a lot of, at this point now, a lot of the business stuff that gets in the way. The transfer portal stuff has taken place. You know who's on your team. It's all about who's going to make the team. You got the, I mean, I've already bought tickets for games for Blacksburg, right? Like you're getting excited, and college game day is right around the corner. College obviously has a different feel with game day because you have something to kind of bring you into it that no NFL pregame show gives you. And it's just a different feeling entirely. And in some form or fashion, it still slightly feels a little amateur at times, you know? In the NFL now, you open camp and it's all about who's holding out. And look, they should hold out for money. It's a business at the end of the day. These teams don't really give a shit about them. So, like, do your thing. But it just has a different feel when it's like, oh, camps are opening up. And here's the list of people that want a new contract. Camps open up for school. And it's like, it's a different vibe. Like you cannot wait to go to that first game and you're counting down the days. I don't feel that way as much about the NFL.
No, you're right. I saw Aaron Rodgers was on a podcast or something recently, and I saw a little clip of it where he was talking about how much easier training camp is these days than it was. He's like, in the old days, like, he's like, he's like, even in the preseason games, like, we used to play. He's like, you'd play like 1 quarter, then 2 quarters, then 3 quarters. He's like, we'd play throughout the preseason. He's like, now we barely play. Practice is, he's like, it's more mentally draining. There's just a lot of mental reps, and absorbing the playbook and everything than it is physical. And I think that's for a multitude of reasons. One, I think just through negotiations, like things have changed as far as um, how this stuff is structured, as far as what they can put these guys through in the preseason. Two, the wear and tear on their bodies, where back in the day it was all about being the tough guy, and three, I think that there's when you have the Aaron Rodgers of the world and some of these guys, he's Patrick Mahomes, so on, the elite level players. When it comes down to it, like they could honestly probably sit on their couch for half of the preseason and show up week one and be on top of it, no problem. I just think that they're so good at what they do that, and that makes sense when Rogers talks about being mental more than physical. Is that there's nothing that Patrick Mahomes is going to do throughout the preseason that's going to make him any better, necessarily. I mean, like physically better, other than maybe like timing with some new receivers or something. But it's like, it's not like his footwork's going to make a drastic improvement, or his arm strength's going to make a drastic improvement, or whatever else. To where in college you see more year to year improvement with some players, and that's I think another fun thing to follow and keep track of, and that lends itself to that hope I was talking about.
I think there's also, again, with college, an element of scholarship. Is somebody going to work their way up to the first string? Are they going to earn a scholarship? You see the human interest pieces a little bit more, especially on Saturdays with College Game Day. I love those videos where the coach tells the guy that they're on scholarship. Like that stuff I just
Yes.
love. And I understand that nowadays it's a little bit different with NIL and the transfer portal, and the loyalty isn't there anymore. But what I've just decided to do is find those little moments that I used to always enjoy and just enjoy them when I see them, especially like I said, those scholarship videos. What's best about that is the teammates are so stoked about the guy getting the scholarship. And like you don't get that in the NFL. Like you don't get a celebration of, hey, this guy's first string because it's like, hey, this is what you're getting paid for. This is your job. Whereas in college, it's a little bit different because you are trying to prove yourself to get to the next level if that's what you want to do. And I think that's why the hope feels so much more innocent and easier to get lost in for me.
Yeah, just the tradition and the pomp and circumstance that
Yes,
exist
all
in
of it.
college sports, and uh, the fan bases, man. Like, it's like when you look at the NFL, it's so unique that like the Bills have the Bills Mafia, but like in the
That's
college
it.
game, that's every campus around the country is on that level on Saturday afternoons. So and that's it's so much fun, and every I feel like in the NFL, like, yeah, there's some exceptions, but like a lot of the stadiums have become so like cookie cutter. There's a lot more of them that are indoors, and I think in college, like you see more, the stadiums are more unique.
They have character.
The atmospheres are more unique. There's way more character, absolutely, and just all the little things that come along with it. I love it, man. I can't wait.
So one more thing about the NFL I want to ask you about briefly is I've noticed an economic trend because I talked about players that are holding out and some of the quarterbacks are holding out. So two of them in particular are holding out. One of them is waiting for a contract that's not holding out, and that's Dak. But you have Tua and Jordan Love, and both of these guys want their money. They want a long-term extension. What's interesting about that for me is Jordan Love just had his first year starting basically. Like he's been in the league for a few years, but he finally just started and now he's looking for more money. And then you have Tua, who I think thinks he deserves the money. I mean, I'm sure Jordan Love does too, but also probably wants to get paid before he gets his next concussion or potentially gets his next concussion. But one thing I noticed is these quarterbacks are costing 60 million a year. And like, is there going to be a point where these teams can't afford to get other guys, other role players because these quarterbacks are costing too much? Like, I don't know how they do it. There's some creative accounting that goes on in the NFL.
Well, something's gonna break at some point. Something's gonna break, or something's gonna have to change. Because and I don't know, I'm not a salary cap expert by any means, but I would think that there's gonna come a point where, yeah, you're not gonna be able to afford to put a team around a guy if you're paying them, a certain amount of money, and then, but at the same time, we've seen just how important that stud franchise quarterback is. Yeah, you can get to the Super Bowl with a Brock Purdy. You can get to close to the Super Bowl with a Jared Goff. But what are the Chiefs without Patrick Mahomes?
Oh, they're
You know what I
nothing.
mean? Like, if you put Brock Purdy on the Chiefs, likely not Super Bowl champions. That's nothing against Brock Purdy. He's a fine quarterback, but he's not Patrick Mahomes. Nobody is, and um, that's why they pay a guy like that what they pay him. And then there's going to be others that are making in that ballpark as well because those guys are so rare. And if you get one, you got to keep them because they could change your franchise for decades.
Well, it's just crazy because like the Cowboys at this point are thinking, are they going to pay Dak $60 million? And it's like, don't you have enough evidence on him? Like he may not be the guy to get you where you need to go. And at some point, you have to start over. Like the Packers are in a weird position because Jordan Love just had this season where he played really well, came on at the end, right? And so they're just in a weird position where they have to decide what to do. Whereas Tua, you have kind of some decent sample size. It's difficult to separate him from the Mike McDaniel system. And, he's lost weight coming into this season. So it's like, is he going to have another concussion this year? You don't know. But it's like, it's so strange to me where like these teams feel like they have to pay whatever the going market rate is. And not all these guys that come on the market at the same time, should Tua be paid more than Lamar Jackson? That to me seems ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And at the same time, yeah, like when you look at just in a vacuum, Lamar Jackson and Tua, yeah, it's absurd. But at the same time, like what's Lamar Jackson done?
Well, I
Um,
mean, he's at
you
least
know,
winning MVPs and they're
sure.
getting to the playoffs. I'm talking about like every guy that comes up all of a sudden now, it's like Trevor Lawrence just got what, $60 million? And what? Like I don't understand at all. And it's just, well, it's his time.
It'll
And I'm like, what do you mean it's his time?
it'll be interesting to see what happens when the first team that decides that they're just not gonna do it.
There's no way that's going to happen because these NFL owners just want, like, I don't know, like there's something weird about it. It's like they have so much money that they need to figure out. They're not going to not outspend one of their
Yeah, I mean,
contemporaries.
it's a measuring contest
Oh,
is
it
really what
sure
it is.
is. I mean, I can't say that I wouldn't do the same
Right.
thing if I owned an NFL franchise. Well, there's a lot of sports going on, and the NFL, college football. We're going to focus a lot on college this year, like we did last year, because I'm definitely pumped about that. And by the way, a little shout out to our friend of the show, Tyler Budge, who was at ACC Press Week this week. And I'm like, seriously? Like, he's just all over the place. He's in my conference. And, good for him, man. He's out there. He's asking questions. I don't know if you saw his video got taken down because he posted the question he asked at ACC Media Day, and they thought it was not his footage.
That's crazy. I did not see that. I did see he was asking like of things to do in Charlotte.
Yes, he
Um,
was. And I was like, seriously, you're only 3 months late or 4 months late,
right.
right? That would have been a fun trip.
Yeah, I think I think he went to Big 12 media days, and obviously he got to,
It's everywhere.
ACC media days. I mean,
Good
good
for
for
him.
him. Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully we can get him on here sometime leading up to the season to talk
I
some
don't know. He
football.
might know. He might not be slumming it up with us because he's made massive strides, and we're still sitting where we're sitting at.
Oh,
But
that's fine. I think he's enough of a college football degenerate that he'd join us.
I agree. All right, one more thing before we get out of here. Iceman stat of the week. You know me. I like my numbers. I like to give some stats. It's been a while. So, buddy, we talked about the Olympics a little bit earlier, and I told you that I had a swimming stat for you. Are you ready?
Absolutely, I am.
So, number 15 on ESPN's list of 100 greatest athletes since 2000 was Miss Katie Ledecky. I think everybody knows who she is. I think this Olympics, she's probably going to be appointment television for a lot of people because she's doing a lot of things. So, her signature event is the 1500-meter freestyle. As we talked about earlier, that's about a mile. It's about swimming a mile. Of the 18 best times ever in that sport for her, she has all of them.
Wow. That's impressive, man. Like,
Yes,
so it's like essentially she's broken the world record 18 times.
correct. Yes,
That's
the 18th best
insane.
time is 1538.81, and she has all of them until 1520.48. So that's just amazing that of the 18 best times in the 1500-meter freestyle for women, she has all of those times. And that right there, folks, is called dominance, and that's why she's on the list.
That's super impressive, man. And wasn't she like 16 or something, like
She
really
was.
young
She's
in her first
very,
Olympics?
very, very young. And that's the other thing, too, is like Michael Phelps was younger. A lot of these swimmers, gymnasts and stuff, you see a lot of young people. And I think about myself at 16, there ain't no way. Like, I was not even prepared to be
Nope.
in college, let alone at the Olympic Games. I mean, it's just insane. So I thought that was a fun little stat to give because it fit in with what we were talking about, but also she could be creeping up that list if she has another. This is probably her last Olympics, but if she has another few gold medals and dominates, I mean, she could bump up to God. Maybe she'll be 12 next time they do this list.
Maybe so.
Maybe she'll pass some of these tennis players. But look, it's been a while, but I had a good time with you, man. I always love talking sports. There has been, I don't know, there's been some stuff to talk about, but I'm glad that we did what we did. And we have a huge, huge fall and winter coming up for you with football starting. We're going to get back to football Friday, I think. We got Braves talk coming. There's going to be a little bit of an announcement, a little bit of hype. Maybe that's an announcement for our third co-host who's probably still watching on that. But we're going to bring back Braves talk for Bradley Nation. We got college basketball. I think we're going to get a little deeper into college basketball this year, maybe even get into a little bit more of the national spotlight either here or an addendum to Bradley Nation. So I'm excited for what's to come. Now, I'm going to be in New Hampshire at Lake Winnipesaukee in the first week of August, enjoying myself with some family. But after that, man, we're off and running.
No, that's exciting. Looking forward to getting into football season, doing our live show, getting back to crunch time. I cannot wait to hear that wonderful, wonderful tune.
We didn't do that a
And
lot last year,
no,
actually.
crunch time. I mean, did we let it fade?
Yeah,
Whatever.
we
We'll
let
get it
it.
back though. It's fun. It'll be fun. Braves talk's gonna be fun. Right now, there's a lot of been a couple schedule announcements that have come out here recently that are okay. They're decent. I just saw not too long before we got on that San Francisco, apparently a home and home with San Francisco,
Okay.
just got out of the schedule, so that's
All
pretty
right.
good. But no, looking forward to it. I was glad to get on here and that we were able to do this. And hope you have a safe trip to New Hampshire. Obviously, we will talk offline. But no, man,
Absolutely.
it's been fun.
Thank you. The summer is winding down, folks. It is going to be the holidays before you know it. But if you are new to all of this and you're listening to us, or if you find this video on YouTube, you can find us on TikTok at INC Sports is the handle, Twitter at Iceman and Coach is the handle. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitch. We're in the audio space. If you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, please hit those 5 stars. As Bomani Jones would say, if you hit 4 stars, I'm inclined to think you are a hater. And just support the brand in any way that you can. Coach, it's always good to see you. To all the people who watch, to all the people who listen, hope this finds you well. Hope this finds you safe. And we will see you down the road. This is Iceman and Coach.